name's Bridie Weaver and I'm the Arts and Culture Advisor at the Banana Shire Regional Art Gallery. Today I'll be sharing with you a conversation between myself and the curator of our current exhibition, Dr. Greer Honeywill. Dr. Greer Honeywill's Lost in Palm Springs is currently on display at the Banana Shire Regional Art Gallery until the 4th of August, so make sure you drop and see it while you can. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Thank you. I'm hoping it can just be a conversation that people can watch back on and learn a bit more about the exhibition. If you could give us a brief overview about what prompted you to begin this exhibition.
It began because I'd finished my second PhD and had, if you've ever done a PhD, you immerse yourself totally in it. You are lost. And I'd finished it and I was ready for the next thing. I did not know what the next thing would be. By chance, my husband was asked to go and open a conference in Las Vegas. Not necessarily my favourite place, others love it, but I said I would go with him. And then I realised it wasn't far from Palm Springs. And Palm Springs people had kept saying, you've got to have a look at it, Greer. You're so interested in architecture. Why don't you look? And I knew absolutely nothing about Palm Springs, really. But I said, okay, let's go and have a quick look. Well, the quick look was 28 hours, just enough time to get there and do an architectural tour and then head for the airport. And I fell in love with the place immediately. And I cannot explain it. Anyway, that's what started it. Then I had to think about it a little bit, but it had even come to me on that first day that I was lost in this huge amount of mid-century modern affordable housing. Mm. And that there were definite connection with things that I have been talking about for a very long time. So that's how it really started. And then I decided to do 3 residencies. That would be the best way. So 2017, 2018 and 2019. And I decided that I would need to stay in a mid-century modern house so that I could unequivocally have a look at it. You can't see everything from the outside. And so I did, and that was great. And then the objective was to connect with as many artists and thinkers as possible.
Yeah. And what was your process like of finding those people? Were they people that you came across while you were over in Palm Springs, or people that you had heard of while researching? Were they kind of organic relationships that you were forming with those people?
No, it was every one of those things, Bridie.
Yeah.
Not just one. I remember my husband having a conversation with somebody on the phone. I had no idea who it was, but it happened to be a man who lived part-time in Canada and part-time in Palm Springs. And Palm Springs came up. And when he finished the conversation, I said, what were you talking about? Palm Springs. And he said, oh, I don't know. I said, well, let's connect with this man. The man was Mike Heatherman, and he was wonderfully helpful. He was a great introducer. But I already knew the work of, say, Tom Blatchford in Australia. Mm-hmm. So he was the first Australian artist that I spoke to and talked to him about being part of this process and exhibition.
And how long did it take, I guess, from starting to find those people until the exhibition was realised?
Well, it took all of the time from 2017 to 2019, and it was only in December of 2019 that I had completed the proposal for Museums and Galleries Queensland, and they eventually joined with HOTA. And it was right on the cusp of COVID. Mm. So that sat things down for a while. Everything was turned upside down. And so that slowed everything by at least 2 years. And then when you get going again, it takes a bit of time again, you know. So it wasn't a fast thing. It was a slow thing. Now, think about this. I've made connections with American artists who didn't know who I was before I arrived, before I presented to them, before I asked them to be part of it. And I was terrified that when I walked away from Palm Springs, they would go, oh yeah, who was that again? But they never did. They were so loyal and wonderful, and they just hung on. They wanted to be part of my vision, and they were. It was fantastic. Not a single thing changed, which was really remarkable.
Dedication. And it definitely is a vision worth realizing. We've had a lot of people just say how beautiful and refreshing it is as an exhibition. It's been quite different to some of the stuff that we've had on recently. So, and most of the people who have come through have never been to Palm Springs and don't know much about it, but it still feels familiar. So I think it's been quite effective for our audience, even as we're not entirely connected to, I guess, the Gold Coast that gets referred to in the exhibition, but it seems like mid-century architecture kind of has a way of being a part of people's lives wherever they've grown up. It's interesting. So
It is.
Yeah.
And you talk about nostalgia, and I have to say that the viewer is always right when they look at a work and they decide what it means to them. It's a personal transaction and a personal experience, and no curator or anyone else can tell them what they should think about a work. And this was played out for me a long time ago when I was showing my work to a curator, and she started crying. Whoa, laughter, jibing, crying was unexpected, so I didn't know what to do, and I stopped, paused, and she eventually said, "That's my mother." And I was amazed because what she was looking at was a wooden structure that looked like a house, sort of. It was abstract, and it didn't look anything like a mother to me. However, she saw it as a mother. So if people feel nostalgic about things, then that's their experience. But it wasn't my experience. I don't have a nostalgia for mid-century modern. I have an exasperation because architects did not learn over the years enough about mid-century modern architecture. And I take this up with every architect I meet, and they all really agree that they should have. But of course, everybody's pushed to the new, everybody's pushed to the more. We want more and more. Mid-century modern architecture is very modest, extremely modest, and often no bigger than my parents' affordable post-war house, which was 116 square metres. But it's the design that is so incredible. You know, the geometry of the structure, the simplicity, the use of protection for sun, the use of glass walls, not windows, glass walls that give you unimpeded views of the garden and allow light back inside, so it's a wonderful transfer outside, inside, and then open plan. I mean, my parents' house would have been so completely different if the walls had been knocked out of it.
And it's interesting that you say architects didn't learn enough, because I've noticed that a lot of the artists you've chosen are talking about proof of existence and almost taking a documentary approach to proving that things were there.
I think I am looking at things and I'm holding and proof of existence. Yes, you get Darren Bradley's work is absolutely proof of existence. And then you get Tom Blatchford and Kate Bayliss, and yep, that's proof of existence, but they've changed it. He plays with the light of the full moon and adds classic cars, and she creates a completely different colour spectrum that is so unexpected. It creates a sense of desire, perhaps. But you have to think about these houses if we go back, and the majority were built in the late 50s, early 60s. And by the early 80s, people had lost interest. And they never were in America particularly interested. They took them for granted because they were second homes, because people didn't live in the desert all year round at that time because of the extreme heat. So you would have a holiday home, which of course had to be affordable, which you could lock up and leave. And that's what people did. But then in the 80s, goodness, people were out there covering the houses with stucco. Can you imagine what that would have looked like? And so Jim Eserman, who's in the exhibition, he scraped off all the stucco on his house. What a job that must have been to get it back to the clean line that it was originally. So they've had a very up and down kind of career, these houses. And then downturns in economy actually worked for the houses, because in the downturns of economy, people don't necessarily extend the house, sell the house, change the house. They just wait for times to be better. And by doing that, they don't knock the house down. So it was interesting. And in the book, I tell the story of how very slowly they came back to life and became so important to identify.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to teach us. Because we live in a challenged world. We've got to live in smaller houses. We've got to be leaner, not use as much, not have as big a footprint. Just at the moment, though, people are not willing to do that. And in a sense, architects are on their side. They know they have to. And that we're crying out for affordable houses. It's essential. But it's really not happening as it should, or as much as it should.
Yeah.
So if you say that I'm holding on, yes, I'm holding on only because there is so much to learn from these houses. And shouldn't we have created houses that challenge the past? I think we should. But then you've got Troy Kudlak, who's busy building houses from the past. Now, why aren't I angry with that? That I'm not angry because he chose particular houses that there was so much to learn from. Joseph Eichler's architects created opportunities for light to come into the centre of the house, the heart of the house. And light in a house is life-giving. It makes life for the inhabitants different, better, wonderful. And so these houses had light coming into the heart of the house. And so he actually gets plans from a university archive, and they're the original plans. Of course, they have to be updated for today, and then they have to be updated because Palm Springs is a seismic area, and you can't have the houses falling down. And but it's quite extraordinary that the houses still, people want to buy them. And where they are mostly in California, more around San Francisco, people don't want to get rid of them. They want to pass them on to other generations, or they want to hold on to them for their entire life. It's hard to get a house, and when one comes up, boom. And of course, they're no longer affordable, are they? because the demand, whenever there's demand, the price goes up.
Yeah. And it seems something unique about that mid-century style that has utility and the aesthetic, which I feel like doesn't happen very often in a sustainable way.
No.
So it's one of the questions here was about universality. So it seems like very often you can take mid-century architecture from somewhere like Palm Springs, plunk it in a completely different context, and it still fits. So what do you think it is about the style that allows it to be versatile and apply to different geological contexts, different cultural contexts? Why is it so worldwide?
I think it's the simplicity of the
Yeah.
architecture, and the logic of the architecture, all of which was influenced by the Bauhaus in 1919. And I don't mean 2019, I mean 1919. It's a long time ago, and we're still not learning the lessons. It's the simplicity, it's placement in whatever piece of land you have. Just because there's a road there doesn't mean the front of the house has to be facing the road. So in a lot of the tracts that were built of these mid-century modern houses in America, they were rotated, which also made them look a little bit different. And so sometimes the front door was on the side, sometimes it was at the front. It all depended on where the sun was coming from and the fierceness of that sun. And of course, we can identify with that. If I go back to my parents' house again, sun in the west, dreadful. What protection? Nil. Makes no sense whatsoever. However, there was no architect there. That was just a development of houses on the cheap. So that as America and Australia tried to build the middle class so that they could be the constantly consuming middle class, these were the first of the affordable homes. And unfortunately, unlike America, no architects were in that tract. And so big mistakes, they all faced the street. Not necessary. None of them had protection from the west. Very necessary.
One of the other questions I had here was about isolation. So kind of the contrast that you have between those harsh environments and then this idea of the American or the Australian dream kind of having a life of leisure. These were secondary houses in such harsh, unforgiving environments. Can you talk a bit about that juxtaposition?
Well, often it's not just about affordability. Sometimes, there is a percentage of the population that likes to be alone, prefers to be alone in the landscape. And so post-war, building a shack on a grubby piece of land that was super cheap and using used materials to build a little shack to live in was their ideal. That was their dream. That was their Australian dream, not the dream that the government was selling. And from Kim Stringfellow's work that people were able to buy 5 acres of land for a very small price, and they had to build a 10 square metre structure, 10 square metres, that's, like one room, but there were no services, no roads, no water, no advantage. And I guess exactly the same as the shacks in Australia at the beach in odd areas or in the country where everything was super cheap and away from everybody else. There are similarities there.
Yep.
It's interesting in America that so many women went to live in the desert. And I was really shocked by that because obviously I'm much too meek and mild. I couldn't possibly live that kind of isolated life that's so hard. What a hard life it would be. No roads, no services, no water, it's work, really hard work to make it alive. Anyway, they did it and they loved it and they made a real mark, which I think is extraordinary.
I find it interesting how sometimes at both ends of the economic spectrum there's simplicity. You've got the Stringfellow houses, and then you've got, your beautiful
the Kaufman House in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Short
So
and thin. But yes, there is an architectural simplicity.
yeah.
Either self-made or brilliant architect-wise.
Yeah. It's just us stuck in the middle with our complexities.
Wanting the house to say too much about us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That was all of my questions that I had prepared for you, but is there anything else that you wanted to mention about the exhibition?
Oh, just that I'm really grateful to the artists for sharing my vision, believing in it. They've all been really wonderful over years we're talking about. And I want to thank Gary Wexler, who is the son of Donald Wexler, prominent architect of that period. Gary was not going to be in the exhibition, but he wanted to be there somehow. He, at the time, was a graphic designer of great note in Palm Springs. So he designed the typography for Lost in Palm Springs. And then he gave it to me so that you could use it, so that everybody could use it, so it could be used in the exhibition. And in that way, he was there, not just talking about his father, but he was there with something that he'd created himself, which was a rather nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, we've got some of your beautiful books here that we're hopefully going to be selling soon. So to anyone who's watching this video between us, we've got some books for sale at the Banana Shire Gallery. And it really is just such a beautiful exhibition. It's had a really positive response so far. And
I'm so pleased people are loving it.
yeah.
That is so fulfilling for me.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that conversation between myself and Dr. Greer Honeywill. If you'd like to see Lost in Palm Springs here at Billawilla, make sure you drop into the Banana Shire Regional Art Gallery before the 4th of August. Lost in Palm Springs is a touring initiative between Museums and Galleries Queensland and HOTA, Home of the Arts Gold Coast. If you liked this interview today, make sure you like and subscribe for more interviews from the Banana Shire Regional Art Gallery.